Hi, this video is designed mostly for my students who are studying the cladogram, but for anyone who is interested as well to see how a cladogram functions, this video may be useful as well. The way the cladogram works is that each of these groups over here is known as a clade. So for instance, this is the mammal clade, Mammalia. This clade, including the birds and the reptiles, this is the clade known as the amniones, which possess the amniotic sac. This clade are all vertebrates, and so on. And the way that it works time-wise is that as we move towards the right, it's symbolic of time, so that as we move back in time, there are fewer groups going back ultimately to a point of single origin. And each of these nodes is an origin point as well of a common ancestor. So the first thing that I want my students to know is that we should write the title. We should know that it's known as a cladogram. So on a test, you would write that there. And then we would also want to know what to write in this circle, and that's basically the name of this organism. And that is the last universal common ancestor, or LUCA. I'm fine with either of those. And it's basically, the last, as the name suggests, it's the last ancestor from which all life today has diverged. So the way that this is interesting enough as is, but we also want to add some more information. So if we look at, it's a series of forks. So here's a first fork, a second fork, third fork, so on, almost like a staircase. So what's going on with this first fork we see is that it's leading to, so one common ancestor led to bacteria, and it led to all these other things. So we're asking ourselves, how does bacteria and everything else differ? And so there are a few things you could write. Simplest thing is probably that it has a peptidoglycan cell wall. So the way that we do that is you make a line over here with pencil, whatever you have, and then you would write peptidoglycan cell wall. I don't plan on writing them all in just because it's a little crunched. On a test, I'd probably give you a little bit more room. I just want to make the marks for now, and I can show you a completed one. At the next fork, basically what's going on is so that bacteria, this branches off a lot. We studied that a little bit in the first week, but for this cladogram, it's all you need to know about bacteria. The archaea differs from everything else over here because everything else here is eukaryotic. So basically, this is the one side of the fork is archaea, and the other side is everything else. So you could write prokaryotic over here, or you could write eukaryotic over here. With a fork, you only have to specify one or the other because it's implied. So likewise, over here, it's implied that there's no peptidoglycan cell wall. Your choice. I like eukaryotic. Doesn't matter. So we continue that way. You could write features of eukaryotic, or you could just write eukaryotic. That's good enough. As we move along over here, we've got another fork. This fork is leading towards the plant and the plant-like protists, and this fork is leading to the other ones. You could write over here autotrophic, or you could write over here heterotrophic. Over here, there's a fork between plants and the plant-like protists. We didn't get into that yet. We get into it more in a few weeks. You could write a protective embryo over here, or no protective embryo over here, your call. You don't have to do that even. We haven't learned that yet. As we move along over here, and one thing that's useful to notice is that this staircase, so to speak, this line, which is it's not a true line. This line doesn't exist in real life or anything, but it's not linear in this fashion. It's linear in the sense that things have evolved this way. It's leading towards mammals. Or the birds or reptiles. That's where the most information we have is. So for instance, bacteria, we just got down to domain, but here we've got down to class, which, as you remember, is kingdom, phylum, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, and then order, family, genus, species. So that's more specific there. Back to over here, we've got fungi, which is this branch, and we've got the animals and animal-like things here. So one thing you can write here is cell wall, which is a chitinous cell wall, or no cell wall over here. within these animals, animal-like things, we have the Choanozoa, which are the animal-like things, which differ from the animals, the true animals, Metazoa, because these guys are single-celled and these are multicellular. Just to review something I mentioned before, so basically everything downstream of this mark, I remember you would write multicellular, these are known as, this is the animal clade, or the kingdom Animalia, or the yeah, that's about right. The kingdom Animalia or the animal clade. Moving on here, we have another branch over here and over here. These differ because these, so Porifera and Cnidaria, we studied. It's that, yeah, so it's right over here actually. Everything over here, these are all bilaterally symmetrical. Remember, it's got one side, it's a mirror image, and these don't. So you could write not bilaterally symmetrical, or bilaterally symmetrical. Bilaterally symmetrical makes more sense over here. Your call. This branch, Cnidaria, you remember, might differ. You might remember differs from Porifera in that Cnidaria has radial symmetry. If Porifera has radial symmetry, that's just due to chance. They're kind of asymmetric. You could write either or, no radial symmetry. Going along over here now, we're branching further on this branch. And one branch leads here, one branch leads here. What's going on over here? These are protostomes. So, protostome or deuterostome over here. Remember, protostome means mouth first, deuterostome means mouth second, anus first, mouth second. Moving on here, we didn't learn really about how this clade differs from this clade. You don't need to specify that. Nematoda versus Arthropoda. The Arthropoda are coelomates. They have a true coelom surrounded by the mesoderm. Nematoda are pseudocoelomates, so it's between the their coelom is between the mesoderm and endoderm. This branch over here, we've got interesting stuff going on. So Platyhelminthes, and then this branch. So Platyhelminthes differs from the other ones in that Platyhelminthes is not a coelomate. It's but these are, so you write coelomate, or over here a coelomate. Platyhelminthes, you might remember, have a common mouth and anus. Just one. That's not why they're and that's weird why they're even categorized as protostomes, but they've got no body cavity. So the mesoderm is touching the endoderm. And Annelida and Mollusca, how do they differ? The Annelida has a closed circulatory system, and the Mollusca have an open one. If we were to branch this out further, and we could have different classes, different classes of Mollusca, we might have Cephalopoda, which is closed circulatory. So basically you'd have it here and here if you were to have a further branch. That's good for this. Now we're moving along further here. Now we're in the Deuterostome Clade. Right, this clade of the Deuterostomes. Echinodermata versus these. Yeah, let's go here. These are known as, so everything from here down, these are the, or I should say everything from here to the right, and I mean everything from here, so yeah, here down to the right. This stuff, they're all in the phylum Chordata. So there's 4 things they have in common. It's they all have pharyngeal gill slits, they all have a postanal tail, they all have a dorsal hollow nerve cord, and they all have a notochord. You could just write C4, which we've discussed in class, is just a quick name I made to summarize that. I plan on possibly asking you later in a different section of the test what C4 stands for and what they are, so you don't have to specify them here. It's just in case you don't, to save on room, and just to demonstrate, in case I wasn't clear before, we're just writing the names of the things, names of the characteristics. Moving along here, so these are all chordata, but this one differs. This one's got a cranium. Now we're moving along a little bit further. You see how we're getting more closely related to ourselves. We've got these differ from all the rest over here, the agnatha, because they don't have a jaw. And you know that because agnatha means without a jaw. A means without, and gna sounds like gnaw, which is to chew. Probably the same root. You can check that on dictionary.com. Cephalochordata, right, so that's, it's got cephalization, but it's no cranium. So that's the little bit of irony there to help you remember that. Moving along here, we've got this clade of jawed animals. All right, and you could write jawed here. You could also write that they have paired appendages. So like something like a lamprey might have a dorsal fin, but everything down here would have pectoral fins, so like one on either side, which gives rise to limbs later on. They also have a vertebral column. Things before it don't, which makes you wonder why they're considered vertebrates. We discussed that in class. Where we got? So downstream of here, we've got the sharks versus everything here. Sharks, you might remember from like second grade, have cartilage, whereas everything over here have bones. Key phrase here is bony fish. Helps you remember it. Bony skeleton is the feature. Everything downstream of here, they all have digits, not just fins. And when we are in embryo, we still have webbing in our fingers. Some people are born like that still. So that's ancestral over here. And likewise, the C4 characteristics we have in embryo. Never heard of anyone being born with a tail except for Goku from Dragon Ball. Amphibia versus everything else. Oh, you could also, over here, if you don't want to write the digits, you could also write that we've terrestrialized. We become terrestrialized, something like that, which basically means we've made the transition to land. Amphibia are born in the water, but they still make it to the land as adults, which gets to the next point about these animals don't really spend any time in the water. I mean, some birds do, but these animals are born on land in eggs. So there's a useful thing there. It's how do they make their transition to land, to like a more permanent land. You could write that over here even. I don't know. I probably wouldn't mark it wrong. There's better answers, but you could write like more permanent transition to land, or birth on land. That's actually a decent answer. Birth on land. Birth on land. The eggs themselves have this structure called the amnion. I mentioned before, this is the amnion clade, and that's a waterproof membrane. Amphibians are born in the water, so they don't have to worry about that. But to make that transition to land, these animals need to have that waterproof membrane to keep the moisture in the egg. Another adaptation, these are all different, but mammals and birds have skin, which keeps the water in. Reptiles have scales, which keep the water in. Amphibians need to stay close to water because the water would evaporate from their body too quickly otherwise. It also, having that moist body helps them breathe. Their skin breathes as much as their lungs do. Moving along down here, we've got mammals versus these. We could write over here that mammals produce milk. That's from where it gets its name. Mamma, as in mammary glands, means milk. Probably related to mama, which is a common name for mother in many languages. Ma in Chinese, madre in Spanish, imma in Hebrew, and similar Semitic languages, and so forth. Easy way to remember. Also, mammals have hair. All mammals have hair at some point in their lives. Likewise, all birds have feathers, and it's that only mammals have hair and only birds have feathers, though some ancestral reptile, somewhere like here, would have had feathers, but then eventually it reached this point where they're separate clades. What else? Birds are homeothermic, and mammals are homeothermic, and that's homeothermy is the ability to create your own heat. That's different than warm-blooded versus cold-blooded, which is, I'm not even sure if there's a general consensus anymore for what those terms mean. But homeothermy does not mean that your body temperature does not change, because animals do hibernate, so that's different than homeothermy. But birds and mammals are able to regulate their body temperatures like that, or are able to keep their body temperatures are able to make their body temperatures what they need to be using their own body heat rather than having to bask in the sun as things like reptiles need to do. And that allowed for tremendous amount of use of energy to enable birds to fly and so forth. This is pretty much what it would look like, and then you'd be writing in the names of the things. Over here, I got more conservative with my use of these ticks. Over here, I've got like on both sides 1 2 1 2 1 2 and so forth. It looks a lot more overwhelming than it has to be. It's only one mark per fork. You don't need to do this fork, and you don't need to do this fork. Remember to write Cladogram, remember to write Luca. That's what's going on there. If you have any questions, you could drop me a comment or send me an email. Here's the thing. I might put up a picture of the I might make it a thumbnail, I guess, of the completed cladogram. Hope this helps. Take care. Be well.